Say what? Say what radio show with no agenda. It's always a surprise. But if we're not having fun, we're doing something wrong. Saturdays, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, 3 to 5 Pacific. On Haggy Shack Radio at HaggyShack.com. Say what? And we are live.
Yes, apparently we are very much alive. Welcome to Say What? This is Nancy Hopkins. Colleen Kelly is producing and our co-host. As our guest host tonight, we have Emily Norcross and Dolly. Well, she's a co-host too all the time, whenever she wants. And our guest tonight is, well, he's pretty much blown my mind. I didn't realize this morning when I would get up that I would find somebody who absolutely saw reality the same way I did. I mean, down to the details. I'm going to say this because I need to say it, not because I think Taryn has to hear it. But Simon Parks has 2 shows a month, and I follow him with Walt Silva and JP to talk about what Simon has said because he's answering questions. So he's just responding to questions through his whole show. I can tell you that many, many times I disagree with what Simon's saying. I don't take him on about it. I just don't bring that subject up. We had Tolik on with us Tuesday. And God bless the man. He is a superior being. But Taryn, I have never in my life seen somebody who had it so together that every question that was asked to you, you had an answer, a detailed answer, that you're somebody whose heart is just amazing. The energy that you are spewing through the system right now is amazing. You are taking a vastly complex subject in so many sub-subjects and presenting it in a way that is understandable. And I hope you're there, sitting there hearing this, because I'm not even sure that you're back. But it is just so, I'm so grateful for having, and I followed you for a long time. When you first started out, I was following you pretty regularly. And then, life gets in the way and you do something else, and all of a sudden it was like when Dolly said that you were going to be on, I'm like, oh my God, I haven't visited him in a while. And it was like going home. It was like, oh yeah, this is the same energy. Yeah, what happened to me? Why did I leave this guy? I have stories to tell you that I think you'll find interesting because they so coalesce with what you have been explaining. But right now, I just want to say hello and thank you so very much for coming. And I want to say hello to Emily, who is our guest host. Em, how are you doing?
I'm well, Nancy. How are you?
Good. You excited about this show?
I am, actually. I was listening to Dolly's show, and I'm floored. I don't know, everything from having the planets aligned so we can have, like my mom said, our perfect bodies and things like that, and then just being able to kind of connect with him with what he's saying is just phenomenal.
Well, thank you, Nancy and Emily. Is it Emily? Or?
Yes, it's Emily.
Okay. It's wonderful to do this. It was difficult for me to start doing shows, and I didn't do many of them until, well, I haven't done many at all, but I'm much more comfortable doing them now than I once was. So this is fun.
Well, this show, that's our motto. If we're not having fun, we're doing something wrong. Dolly, I'm so glad you joined us again. Was there any question that you, after you hung up, you're going like, oh, I should have asked him that too? Probably many.
No, I figured that I laid some pretty good groundwork for you.
Absolutely. That's why we let you go first.
And I'm so excited that you're happy about it. And when I was talking to him, I thought, oh, Nancy believes that. It was an exciting interview for me. Sorry, I am eating. It was a very exciting interview for me. I had asked the Angels prior to him coming on, please let this work out for the highest and best of all concerned. They didn't fail me at all. Thank you very much, Taryn.
Thank you. This is fun.
It's the unplanned shows that are always our better shows, because we've just given ourselves over to whatever spirit guides, whatever names we give them, to put us on the right track and the right path. And obviously, you're on the same path as we are. Colleen, did you have any question that came to mind that you wanted to voice?
Actually, any questions that I had, I typed them in the chat as the show was going on. However, I'll just keep listening and pipe in whenever.
Okay, thank you. I know you're doing so much in the background. Okay, where can we start even? Let me tell you a story. Let me just give you a little background in me.
Great, that'd be great. Help me.
Yeah, and you can just relax for a while. I'm gonna, tell stories. They like my stories, I think. They keep coming back, so they apparently like them. They've heard most of them already, but,
This is my first interaction with you. I've not met you before, so this will be good.
Yeah, this'll be fun, okay? So, I'm 68 years old. I was on a timeline that was very much on the ascension wavelength. Mm-hmm. I wrote about it. I've written 2 books, actually 3 books, published 3 books. And it was in the 90s when everything began to coalesce again, and we had groups of people. I had shamans coming to my property. First off, let me tell you about the property, because talk about vortexes. The story of how I got the property is very long, but it was magical. There was no reason in God's green earth that I should have an acre of land in one of the most desirable places in the world when I hardly made, enough money to survive. But they managed to get me here on an acre of land, and then gradually we began to understand that this was not just any acre of land, because from the get-go, it was magical stuff was always happening. What do I mean by magic? You'd see elves, you'd see fairies, you confront archangels. You would have people come from all over to just sit around a fire and play music that they've never played before. We just had a whole bunch of different drums and horns and, pipes, everything that they could just play, and they would play. And you felt a connectedness to off-world and other groups within the world. It was just unbelievable magic. So everything is going fine, and then 2000 comes along. Now, I have a very small house, and it was extremely, extremely damaged over the years. And I decided I had to redo the entire electrical. So I had this guy, and as we started doing the electric, we realized that, dang, the actual structure of the house was all rotted out from many years of floods, which I hadn't known when I bought the property. But that flood stories are another thing. But when he's taken out the old stud and we're replacing them all, I'm in the kitchen, I'm doing dishes, and all of a sudden I feel this weird energy thing, and he walks around the corner, and he's got something in his hand, and I start freaking out. I'm like backing up. I drop the dishes, I'm backing up, I'm going, what do you got? And he said, well, and then my reaction was so intense that he stopped and he started backing up. And he's got this thing in his hand, and he says, I just found it between the outside wall and the stud. And I said, what is it? And he holds it up to me, and it was about 3 inches, maybe a little more than 3 inches, and it was like a circle, but it was like a half circle, like the globe had been cut, not in half, but maybe in a third. And in this wooden circular thing, there were these talons. Like, I thought maybe, to be honest, it was either an eagle, I hoped it was an eagle, or it was a dragon. And it was so full of negative energy that I just didn't even know what to do with it. So I finally took it from him and I put it someplace and I virtually never touched it. But I didn't think it was something I needed to get rid of. It was just like, okay, I don't know what this is yet. So, and that was back in 1988 probably. So 2000 comes along, and for a lot of reasons there was nobody there for Christmas, except me. Well, and whoever else lives here in the property, spirit-wise. So what happened was that I started to get fixated on this wooden carved out thing. And I hadn't thought about it in a decade. And I'm going like, why is this in my head? Why is this in my head? And, you know, I was off from work for a week. It was just blissful. I was having such a good time. But this thing kept coming into my head. So I finally said, all right, what am I supposed to do with this? And I got very clearly, burn it. So I said, okay, all right, okay. So I make up the fire thing and, I throw it on the fire. Now, I've never taken a picture of it. I would never think of taking a picture. It would lock it in time and space. So I have no ways I was going to ever do this. Never had it drawn, never. It's just an image in my head. So it's burning, and as the fire starts to engulf it and it starts to sort of flicker, this very clear voice comes to me, and I'm paraphrasing, but it said that there was another timeline that was very dangerous, and it needed help. Mm-hmm. And would I agree to jump timelines? Yes, you're on the Ascension timeline, but are you willing to jump timelines to try to fix this one? So I said, well, will I succeed? Yes. Will anybody be left behind? No. I said, fine. And about that time, that wooden piece of thing just erupted in flames and very quickly went to charcoal. That was 2000, Christmas of. Then George Bush became president, and we had 9/11, and we had the Iraq War, and we had, I mean, it turned into a nightmare. But the way that they kept me, let's say, in the go of it, and I don't believe that I was the only one. I think maybe everybody jumped. I just happened to be the person who was trained to be more aware, more sensitive, and, you know, it really wasn't a decision. It was, you know, kind of like I couldn't have said no, I don't think. So I think that it happened to a lot of people, and I've talked to people over the years who feel that there was something that happened at that moment. So a bunch of us jump over here. Now, what do I mean by the jumping? It's that for every decision that anybody has, and I'm not trying to tell you, Tarina, I'm sure you understand this is just for the audience here, mm-hmm. But for every decision that we make, whether we go to the right or the left, there is an energy sort of storyline that starts up. If you're on the right, you don't have the energy putting into the left, so it fizzles out. Mm-hmm. So when you jump timelines, all you're doing is you have merged with a timeline that at some point or another you decided to go one way and that one started to go that way. And it's such a powerful timeline that you actually maintain a parallel story for a very long time.
Yeah.
Okay? So there was this storyline of awfulness and a storyline of total ascension.
Right.
And those two are the primary timelines that continually coexist no matter what is happening to timelines.
Well, the awful timeline is no longer.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't. But that's because of people jumping then and all of the changes that have allowed this, the new reality, let's put it, and it's not, see, what I'm finding out, which is interesting to me, it was like many times when I've told the story, I said, well, you know, we went from the ascension to this bad thing in order to get it so that, you know, everything would work right. But I really think it was more of a fact of just the physics of it, that the ascension timeline would eventually merge with the dark timeline. And if there weren't light workers in the dark timeline to have made adjustments it could have demolished the Ascension timeline because nobody would have been prepared for something that ugly to all of a sudden be careening into their space and place.
Source has worked through every embodiment there is to bring this to a close. It is not it's not a one person or another, it's everyone.
Everyone. That's the key to it, is that, when years ago, before the internet, you had all these different people who started getting the messages. But how do you tell people around you who are not getting the same messages?
Exactly.
And so what started to happen.
You woke up very early?
Say again?
Were you one of those that woke up very early?
Understand my age. See, this is really key to it, is that, my generation, the 60s generation, okay, we were children when they killed the timeline of Ascension, the first one, with John Kennedy. Okay, or not the first one.
I was in third grade, I think.
So I was 15.
Okay.
Okay, and what happened was that a child's mind is a child's mind until the child asks a question that no adult can answer. Mm-hmm. And suddenly it starts clicking on, oh my God, what's happening? In this case, nobody could answer any question that a kid could ask them. Why did this happen? How did it happen? Nothing. It was like a complete shattering of reality. And for 3 days, this whole world came to a halt. As, from the assassination to the point that they actually got him to the cemetery. And then the television stopped playing a lot of it. I mean, it was still a lot of it, but still you had to break away at that point. Mm-hmm. But it's never been the same.
Right.
Reality's never been the same. So to me, reality, somebody wrote, he said, what is this with this reality changing? He says, I've already done this. Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, used to bring me stuff. It was that kind of a boom, your whole reality has just shifted. So I never bought into the old reality. And I think that my generation, that's why we went on to protest the war in Vietnam, to be the kind of thorn in the side of the dark that, kept kind of aggravating them. Like, no, we don't buy it. We don't buy it.
And then much reviled in the 80s too, for doing that.
Oh, yeah, but now they hold us in high esteem.
Yeah, you do.
So, so the concept of timelines and the way that realities, kind of, to get the real understanding of it, you almost have to jump them,
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I wanted to tell you, set this up for something else, my co-host on one of the radio shows is Walt Silva. And Walt is a shamanic journeyer. And he and I have been following Corey Good and David Wilcock and Randy. What's Randy's last name? Good. No. I always want to mix them up. Anyway, Randy, it'll come to me. And we've been following the concept of the secret space program and the fact that, you've got the Sphere Alliance out there. And the Sphere Alliance has just been talked about, okay? Now, Walt is a shamanic journeyer. So he goes to do a shamanic journey for a client, because what he does is the client gives him questions, and then he goes to the other side to connect with the guides of this particular person to get guidance. So he's about to do this, and all of a sudden he's someplace else, and he's going, uh-oh, where am I? And he's in a cave, and sees an image, okay, and he's like all of a sudden drawn to this thing that's happening, and he could see myself in the image, and he could see a blue avian, and the blue avian was holding something out to me, okay. Now, why this is sort of confirmation of what happened next, because Walt is kind of a mad scientist. He puts together energy devices. That's a long story about how many energy devices and how we've been given these devices in order to create a new reality, to actually structure it within the 3D. But what happened was that he sent me a device, but he builds them and he doesn't know what they're for. So he sends them to me and I have to get the operator's manual, right? So, I'm like looking at this thing. I'm trying to work it. I can turn it on, but it's like it's not even powering up anywhere near what I think it should. And I'm going like, what's wrong here? And I get, oh, there's another piece. There's something else that it's connected to something else. So a couple weeks later, I get another thing in the mail and I go, what is this? And then I was, oh, this is the second piece. And so then I'm going like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing with this, you know? Well, what they wanted me to do was to set up between, I've got about, I think it's about 20 feet wide in this room. And on one side, they had me set up the first device, and then on the second side, over the fish tank, they had me put up this other device. And I don't want to get into the devices and what they look like, but what happened was I'm going like, okay, what is this? And they said, it's a beacon. And I said, a beacon to what? Why do I need a beacon? And they said, it's the blue avians. And I said, why would the blue avians have to, who can come from anywhere in the, I don't know where they're coming from, need a beacon? And the answer was to get to the right reality. And I just wanted to share that with you because it was, you know, it was one of those things where I'm going like, okay, I kind of get it. Yeah, all right. Because we got so many realities happening that to get to the reality where they're going to make the difference, we are making the difference so that they can make the difference. They really needed to get into the right reality. So they needed a beacon. Now, whether they needed the beacon or they just were using that as a way of educating me. You know, I never underestimate the fact that they will tell me I got to do something, which I know that they can do. They're just training me.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So they had your friend create this device, and then they had you create the instructions on how to use it?
Right, essentially that's it, yeah.
Oh.
It's like I get a download of what it's supposed to do. And it actually runs on neutrinos.
Is it still in operation?
Oh yeah. Yeah, as a matter of fact, the beam is right behind me.
I'm curious why they would need it now, being that they're supposed to be docked with the Earth.
Well, I asked last night, I said, are we still synced? You know, do you want, you know, is there something I should do? And they said no. And it is off kilter to me. You know, it's like at an angle now. So, I don't know. I really don't.
I'll ask about it and I'll find out.
Yeah, ask about it. Because the reason that it's an extremely powerful device. I've been working with energy devices for, 50 years. And this one, when I was setting it, it was already set. And, I was walking by it and I noticed that it's what it is a triangle. Two pieces, a triangle, and on top of it is a sphere. Mm-hmm. And the sphere sits in the triangle. And both of them are made with enerology concepts of orgone and shungite, and they're complicated. I don't even know what's inside of them. I just know how to operate. So anyway, it was really off. The sphere was off of the triangle. So I reached over and I put my hand over the sphere. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I did, I had such an incredible jolt of energy that went through my arm that it virtually knocked me away from it. And for the next 8 months, my arm gave me problems.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It was really, really interesting because, I knew it was energetic. But I mean, I'm talking about once in a while I'd get this extraordinary pain, like, I don't know, whoa, but it wasn't an ache. It would just come on, and, then finally, for whatever reasons, it went away. We were trying everything to get rid of this. Nothing seemed to be working. Mm-hmm. And then it went away. So, but, it's a very powerful device. And like I say, I don't know if it was ever needed to begin with. They train us. Dolores Cannon was asked the guides in the first volume of The Convoluted near the end. She asked the guides, what's the purpose of humanity? And the response was to learn how to manipulate energy. So if we're going to learn how to manipulate energy, it's almost like you need to have devices to show you how to manipulate energy.
I would say I would kind of differ with that slightly. I would say the reason for humanity is the integration of beingness from the highest levels of the archangels to the 3D forms and creating a new form that can navigate all realms. And the human being has the most advanced DNA in the universe. And that's one of the reasons why the Sphere Alliance is here. It's because they know the DNA here is the latest version. So I would have a slightly different take on that. But that's
well, I think it's just teaching.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because how can we explain to people that it's an energy universe?
Mm-hmm.
That it's frequencies.
It is frequencies. It's
Say again?
magnetics and it's love. It's frequencies and yeah, it is.
Yeah, everything is, that is energy. It's frequencies. But, yes, the love energy is what's propelling it all to begin with.
Yeah.
I'm firmly with you that, source is, well, the way I explain it is, if God knows everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Then it's sort of like if I say to you, do you know mathematics? And you go to me, yes, I do. And I say, okay, how do you know that? And you go, well, 2 times 2 is 4. If God knows everything, to know everything, you have to think about everything. And because he's omnipotent or she's omnipotent or they are omnipotent, all of a sudden everything that they think becomes creation.
Yeah. But you are part of that. You are source. You are part of that whole cycle of creation in an individual form for a period of time as you hold that form. And you are also that when you're in a formless state. So, I guess I'll, it's like I did with, the prior show, I would say God, or what you want to call God, is all that is. And,
right.
All the components that go into all that is. And all that is does know everything because everything is within that, I guess. It's, source is what we swim in, I guess you could say. And anything happens within that because we're composed of that substance or whatever you want to call it. That essence, it's known. What we haven't had and what is coming, which is a new thing in the universe, is being able to draw upon that data. Because, if you think of, we're going through a quantum leap in creativity. Because before, with the prior 2 waves of creation, the first and the second wave, you have these individual beings who have their knowledge base and they know it's one, but they don't really have access to each other's data, okay? So there's a sense of being separate from one another. And then it actually, over time, grew into a kind of a hoarding of knowledge one way or the other between various beings, which came down into the beings that they created in the realms and the cosmoses they created. But what's happening now is that every being, sources, going to distribute its database, if you will, so that it can be accessed by anybody, and a complete flattening of the concept of hierarchy. So that when you need something, you will be able to go internally into your heart and draw it out. And, it doesn't make sense that if we are source and maybe you knew French in one life, why do we have to learn it again in another? In another incarnation. You've done it. You should have it. You should have access to it. And that's what's coming. So it's a really interesting time. This multiplies, this would have I guess, how the internet multiplied the productivity of people? Because you could get data very quickly without having to go buy a book. this is the same kind of thing, but on a much grander scale. It's the interconnection between all the beings, kind of an internal, what my friend Heather calls the ICOMS and ITAC. Has been lying latent. There's a form of telepathy that's heart-based. It doesn't use the pineal gland, and it's been only known by the highest of the hierarchies. And telepathy through the pineal gland is very real, and it's a useful tool, but it can be read by some beings that can read light, and read thoughts. In this heart-based communications, there's no way to break it. It goes through source. It's a way of communicating with people, and it's like telepathy, except for it has a richer emotional content than telepathy. A friend of mine likens it to. She says telepathy is to her is like being shouted at with a megaphone, where what she calls ICOMS is like a nice warm hug while you're with a friend, So they're a different form of communication, but, they both exist.
Well, I think that most of us will feel that connection and just have a draw towards somebody.
Yes.
And you're feeling it in your heart. There's nothing in your head that says, I should be so drawn to this person. In fact, you might not even like the way they look, but you're feeling this tug at your heart.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's been amazing to me how many people that I've interacted over the last 3 years, and I didn't know why until I had access to the data collectors of the Spirit Alliance, and then found out that I have this long history with these beings, and we were recognizing each other, but not knowing why. But it just felt a resonance, a kinship, if you will,
See, that's what we think we have here at Wolf Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
That the people that are here, that come here to be hosts and producers and the listeners, that there is some connectedness that goes beyond just, of course, coincidence being thought and action. Emily, do you have anything that you would like to ask directly?
I do, actually. Taryn, so I was young when Nancy had her experience where she was asked to go to a different timeline. I don't necessarily know, well, I don't recall. We'll just say that I don't recall if I had something like that, but I've shared many of the same experiences that Nancy has. Is there something that I should kind of think back on to try to jog my memory and see if I was on a different timeline?
You can ask your heart and get the answer that way. It'll come to you. And,
okay.
And be open to, the answers will come in a weird way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it can come in music.
Okay.
It can come in something as crazy as an advertising slogan.
Mm-hmm.
But you will know it when you hear the answer.
Okay.
And then the whole universe, and once you get tuned to that, the whole universe is speaking to you constantly. And I had an incident the other night where I'd fallen asleep in front of I was watching Futurama. It's a cartoon.
Yep, I know what it is.
And it cracks me up every time I watch it. And because it mocks, the concepts that people had of the future.
Mm-hmm.
And being how limited they were and stuff. And I was asleep and I woke up and it was a scene where they're going into a kabuki theater.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd all morphed into the Scooby-Doo characters. Solving this Scooby-Doo crime, And everything in that scene, first of all, was a kabuki theater. And then there was George Takei, was the guy from Star Trek,
mm-hmm.
who, he was running the kabuki theater, and he's from, the Space Connection to Star Trek. There was all these things in it, and I'm just going, oh man, this is so surreal. And it was hilarious. And I had seen this episode before, and it never affected me that way. But in this silly cartoon were all these, nuggets of clues staring me in the face. I'm going, how funny. It's almost,
oh my gosh.
They wrote this episode for me right now.
Right.
And I just started laughing. It was a riot, And it's funny what stuff comes out, and sometimes you'll hear it from a friend. Sometimes you will hear it from someone you don't like too much. But if you listen and listen what comes, you'll get the answer,
Okay. Fair enough.
Did I answer that completely?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just, I'm trying to think of if anything's ever jogged my memory or anything's even, changed anything. I mean, I've had experiences with the other side as a young child, teenager, all the way up into my adulthood, so I'm trying to see if maybe any of that was kind of a switch for a timeline kind of thing.
Would you describe yourself as a millennial? Or,
Oh, I'm absolutely a millennial.
Okay.
I'm 30 years old, so I definitely fall in the category of a millennial.
So
also, an indigo child.
Definitely. My daughter's an indigo as well.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Emily has a show on that follows this where she actually talks as being an indigo to people who are also out there. It's a very interesting show.
Oh, sounds interesting.
Yeah.
The indigos, my experience was I really enjoyed watching my daughter grow up because she was surrounded by these other kids. Did I lose you guys?
No, you're here.
Okay. So all of a sudden I got quiet. Maybe it was the computer fan went down, but these kids were so aware, especially in high school, and the things they would talk about, I was just like, oh, this is so cool. And there people were just knocking the millennials left and right. They're lazy, they're this and that. They don't want to work like we used to work. And
yep. I actually got into a fight at a supermarket with an older gentleman. He was in line in front of me, and I was patiently waiting to finish up my grocery order. And he looked at me and then looked at the lady at the register. He's like, the 20 and 30 years olds of this country are going to destroy us. They have no work ethic. They're horrible people. Well, needless to say, anybody who knows me, I went up one side of him and right down the other. I hold 3 jobs. There's no, there are some millennials that, yes, they are stuck as basement dwellers licking the walls of their parents' basements. And then there are some of us who actually get up and move. And I'm very thankful to have a group of friends of millennials that actually get up and move.
the millennials are not motivated by money.
No, we're not. We're motivated by lifestyle more than anything.
Yeah, well, meaning. They want meaning.
Yep.
They want meaning in their life, and they want to fix things.
There was a article published, I think it was Huffington Post.
Mm-hmm.
They spoke about how millennials are very different from when our parents were working.
Yes.
So the age of our parents, now my parents are older for how old I am. Sorry, Mom. But they said that even though our parents worked for what they have, we're okay with having little to have a higher quality life.
No, definitely.
My husband and I are going through a transition in our life right now where we're trying to simplify things, and we're trying to get to a point where we're not spending so much money on useless debt and useless, I live in New Jersey. Taxes are absorbent here.
Yeah.
And we're looking to make a move, and that move involves us going to a southern state where it's a lot more affordable to live, and it allows us to not only have a home that we like, but it allows us to actually travel and have fun and put money to where it counts. And a lot of millennials are doing that as well.
Yeah, it's definitely, I see that with my daughter. My daughter is still going through the whole college thing.
Okay.
She graduated in physics, and now she's going for a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
But she's on that school loan treadmill.
Yep.
And she says, Daddy, am I going to have to face these huge bills? I said, no, you're not going to have to. I said, it's not great that you have this debt, but things are changing, and I know it's changing. And I wouldn't have, if I was her, I wouldn't have taken that debt on, but, that's her choice. But, she's going to at least be in a profession if it did on that she could pay it back.
Right.
But I know that the whole money system's a fraud.
Oh yeah.
And the national debt's a fraud. They're, you add all the national debts up and say, well, who is this money owed to,
Mm-hmm.
And what they have done is they've taken people's value. They actually monetize people, and then don't tell you they took your value and tell you you're worthless, and they aggregate it into a central bank.
Mm-hmm.
And at the central bank, when you go sign for a car loan or a home loan, basically the bank never puts their money at risk. They take your signature. They go to the central bank. The central bank gives them a check from your value. So the bank who is carrying the paper never truly made a loan at risk, which is the very definition of a loan.
Right.
Because they never put anything at risk. And they tell you you made a loan, and then when you don't pay on it, on a loan that was your value to begin with, they charge you interest for,
mm-hmm.
They come and take your car or your home, ruin your life, and then take that asset that they never really paid for. And this is the fraud. So, and the millennials right now are at the worst of it because the debt is ballooned through this whole compound interest thing.
Yep.
To, it's exponential.
Mm-hmm.
And when things go exponential, it just gets ridiculous. So that's, I feel for people like you and your husband and my daughter with the student loans. I mean, by the time she gets to her PhD in another 4 or 5 years, it's, who knows what that'll be.
Yeah, I mean, and look at the tiny house trend. Tiny house trend started as millennials were coming out of college and said, I have like $750,000 of student loans. I mean, obviously not that much. I definitely exaggerated, but they wanted to live within their means and they wanted to have something that they can call their own and still be able to travel.
Mm-hmm.
So what, let me ask you as an Indigo, just to kind of sidetrack from Nancy, sorry, but as an Indigo parent, did you find any challenges raising an Indigo child, or was it more of a growing experience?
For me, my awakening started just before she was born.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was complete joy.
Okay.
I was just like, go get him, girl, and it's a unique time for women because women have more opportunities now. And,
mm-hmm.
and my daughter, for example, one of her idols was Captain Janeway on Star Trek Voyager.
Oh, I love her already.
And my woman commander who's still female and feminine, but a powerful being and as a role model. My daughter loved that show. Mm-hmm. And then here's my daughter, she's interested in the moons of planets and things, and she spent 2 intern summers at NASA, and she's having a blast doing physics and doing studying things, and she gets excited, I mean, how many times have you seen a kid excited about school, And she's just jazzed, And
especially a lot of Indigos who tend to kind of hang back from the whole school social scene.
Yeah. And, my daughter was the one, she thought she couldn't do math, and we had to do tutoring, in grade school because she got behind because she had the bad teacher in math. But she found out, she does more math than I ever did in college.
Right.
Yeah. And, she's really doing well. And she's got this, what I liked about them is they have none of the bigotries that my generation had. I graduated from high school in 74. So I was like the tail end of that whole Vietnam thing. I missed the draft by 1 year,
Oh, wow, yep.
They ended the draft in 75, I think. And I thought I was going to have to go to war and die in some steamy jungle, And, which was happening to a lot of my friends. It was a very nihilistic, time for teenagers. A bit like these kids now, some of them don't see much future for themselves. And with the economy the way it is. But there was a lot of bigotries. There was still some latent, racial bigotries. There was definitely bigotries against homosexuals
Mhm.
in my high school years. There was some gender issues too, because the whole women's movement was just beginning.
Mhm.
And these kids now, they just don't have those bigotries. And I'm speaking, she was going to school in San Diego, so it's a very multicultural area. And
Right.
all my daughter's friends were international kids. But, they just didn't have some of the biases that I grew up with
Mhm.
and had to face on my own, and come to terms with them. So to me, they're beautiful beings. And, and she's definitely indigo. She even had slightly purple cast to her skin when she was born.
Oh,
It was
wow.
kind of like a baby doll porcelain look,
Mhm.
She was, was an amazing kid. She would say things to me at 2, 3, 4, these profound things. I would just look at her like, where did that come from? And I had one of the things that was really fun because when I got access to the Spirit Lines, I asked them about my daughter, who is she?
Mhm.
And they told me she was an advanced propulsion engineer with the Pleiadians. Another aspect of hers, in the Pleiadians. She's got 2 aspects. And, I was like, oh my word. And it explains the physics thing.
Right.
So, to see these traits come out in a human embodiment of that being that match the one in the Pleiadians is really interesting.
Mhm. That's it's I would love to get more into the Spirit Lines because personally myself, I have no idea where I'm going in this life. None.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up. I jump from career to career. I'm also, we'll say I'm a hard pill to swallow for most people, so I don't necessarily stick with jobs very easily. Stupid stuff really tends to piss me off.
Yeah, I was the same way. For the longest time, I couldn't figure out why my path took it the directions it did.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was like a 20-year period of training. And then in 2013, it all gelled and I used all those skills at once. So it didn't make any sense until 2013.
Mm.
And then it made perfect sense. It was like ideal training. So, that may be the case for you. Maybe you're still in training, Maybe there's these experiences that are building for some moment that are, when it's your time to put them all to use,
Well, I hope that training is going to pay off because it's been frustrating thus far. Oh, I've definitely gotten some gray hairs over it. But that's awesome. So when you say you became awakened,
mm-hmm.
What was that experience like for you?
Oh, you wouldn't know it from my blog now, but I was what people call a Christian fundamentalist.
Okay.
And I was kind of in an obscure sect. And I had very black and white views of the world. I viewed things strictly from the standpoint of what was written in Scripture,
Mm-hmm.
which basically hasn't been added to in 2,000 years.
Right.
And I was trying to fit new concepts, new situations into that framework. And it just doesn't work. And I kind of reached a point where I talked to these preachers and my questions, they could never answer them.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what the heck, You're supposed to have these answers, You tell me it's all in the Bible. And then I started noticing inconsistencies. And part of it was, viewing the Bible with some sort of homogeneous, linear, cohesive unit that really is not. It's a collection of people seeking for God and interacting with what they believe to be God, and these are viewpoints of beings over time, over different time periods, and it changes even in those books,
Mm-hmm.
And without getting too theological about it, but I had to realize that there are many concepts that, like for example, the Buddhists understand things that Christians don't.
Right.
And the Hindus have this amazing historical background about things that have gone on Earth, you know. It's hidden in their myths, but it's there. Like what's the Mahabharata and what's the other Upanishads and those writings. There's some amazing stories in there, and you see this all around the world. And you have to almost travel sometimes to learn of some of these stories. Talk to locals. But there's stories all over the world. There's some really interesting stories in North Africa.
Okay.
Like basically Morocco is where a lot of the survivors from Atlantis 2 came. The survivors of Atlantis are, from my discussions with the Syria Alliance, are the Berber people in Morocco, the mountains. They're kind of they're village people, live in their own tribes. They have, some of them have blue eyes, some of them have blonde hair. They don't look Arabic at all. And some of them are intermarried. And then there's them, the Cherokee and Iroquois in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and the related tribes to those people. They are also survivors of Atlantis, and that's why they were called the 5 civilized tribes.
Right.
And the Basque in Spain are also from that era, and there's some people in Syria. I think it's what they call the Aramaic speakers in Syria, I think, if I remember right, were the descendants of Atlantis. And they all seem to be Rh negative blood types. And that goes back to Atlantis.
Right, I was just going to say that must be from Atlantis.
Yeah, and they have that common thread. Oh, and the Maya. The Maya also go back to Atlantis. And they were another group of survivors. They went several directions when things sunk. Some of them knew it was coming, got in boats and whatever. And some of them, I don't know what they hung on to, pieces of wood or whatever, but, they survived. And basically the whole world had to start over, so, from scratch. Because it was such a devastating disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just interject here and ask you what you think that destroyed Atlantis? Do you know that story?
Yeah, there was 2 things. It was somewhat self-inflicted. There was infiltration by the Dracos. There was, they got haughty in their attitude. So really, they injected an attitude of superiority into them, those people. And their scientists they were geniuses with crystals, okay? And everything was crystal based. And they had a crystal weapon. And I don't remember if I read this somewhere else or if it was from the Sphere Alliance, that there was another group called the Ionians in the area of Greece, I believe. And they had created resonators because they knew that Atlantis was building this crystal weapon. And there was wars going on between Atlantis and I think India and some other places. And some of them were nuclear, some of them were crystal energy weapons. And anyway, the Ionians placed these resonators around Atlantis, which was apparently between North Africa and Florida somewhere. And there's good evidence it was about 1,000 miles short of Morocco. And in the Atlantic. And these when they fired up that weapon, the resonators resonated with it. And basically the whole thing sunk. The burst of energy that came out of that thing. And caused the entire shelf that it was on to just fall into the ocean. And some of the beings were escaped to some Pleiadian ships that were in orbit and went with the Pleiadians. The rest of them had to eke it out. They ended up in Egypt, they ended up in the Middle East, they ended up in Spain and North America and Mexico and South America. but they intermarried with other peoples that were already there. But there were several civilizations going on at that time, and they were at very different stages of development. Some of them were very primitive and looked down upon because they were primitive. You know, like some people would, maybe people in the Amazon or Papua New Guinea, you know, and others. And then you have these beings who were basically a galactic civilization, starfaring and otherwise. They looked down on the ones who weren't so advanced. And there was issues of attitude, and it was basically separation that led to a calamity. And, you know, the separation consciousness that was extended even in Atlantis.
Well, now, would you agree with Edgar Casey, who says that the people that were there at the time of Atlantis are incarnating now to fix the mistakes they made?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're all those essences, okay? They incarnated in the surviving humans, in their children, in the children's children. You know, I would say that's true all since that happened. You know, and everybody's been kind of in a loop of incarnation here, because the way the people were kept trapped into the Earth sphere, you know, after they died. Which I think David Icke goes into that a little bit with the moon stuff. So there was basically an essence trap on the moon that returned people here.
With that said, let's take a break here and you feel good enough to go for another hour?
Sure, we're doing good.
Excellent, excellent. So Colleen's going to put on a little tune. We'll take a break and we'll be back shortly. Thank you all. Welcome back to Say What? Say what? Yes, Say What. Think there for a second. This is Nancy Hopkins. Colleen Kelly is producing and co-hosting. We've got Emily Norcross on today, who is every third Sunday of the month, Saturday of the month. She is our guest host, and Dolly is here with us very often. We have Taryn with us, who is better known as America Kabuki. Did I say that? Okay. And this is Haggy Shack Production, HaggyShackRadio.com. You can donate there, and you can donate at it's HaggyShack.com or WolfSpiritRadio.com. The money goes for the upkeep of the station and for, you know, all the fees and everything that go along with it. None of us are paid. None of us are given money, but we do it out of the goodness of our heart, because our heart gets so filled every time we have to, when we interact with people, and especially somebody as fun as Taryn, because he's gone 2 hours before this, now he's gone an hour with us in this show, and now he's got another hour. Where were we? We had just covered Atlantis, or we were ending Atlantis.
The question was asked about some tribes ascending early.
Right.
That's where we left off.
Yeah. You want to read? Oh, hey, do you believe some tribes ascended early? Possibly the Anasazi. Go for it. Do you know?
There are groups of beings who have left Earth to their own realms. The main body of the Maya did that, and they disappeared mysteriously and left all these empty pyramids everywhere. They have been in another realm. They are here now among the Sphere Alliance. They're waiting to rejoin their, you know, the ones that are still here on the ground. There was Atlantis 1 left. They became the Andromedans and Pleiadians and went spacefaring. There's been many instances of that over the history of Earth. The Earth has a very, very long history of multiple civilizations. And multiple rises and falls, too.
Now, let me ask you, you're indicating that because a lot of people haven't heard this first show, you're indicating that the Sphere Alliance is, essentially people from all over. How many did you say there were in the Alliance?
Well, they told me, what did they tell me? When they first docked around Earth, there was approximately 4,000 spheres. growing in size from, 100-man crews to to billions, okay? Some of them are like entire planets, okay? They're not currently, for the most part, visible yet, but they are here. They've been waiting for the right moment, and this is really Source's timing in all this. I couldn't even give you a date or time it would happen either, and neither could they. They're waiting for the right moment. It'll be the right moment. But they told me recently that the number of actual spheres, some of them have come merged, and don't ask me how that's possible, because my little brain tends to think of spaceships being hard little metal things, and
think in terms of energy and bubbles.
Yeah, I think in terms of programmed plasma. Plasma is a liquid form of light. That helps me picture it better. How that works exactly, I don't know, but these ships are quite malleable. Some of the ships are even sentient. They're intelligent entities into themselves. And as far as they take care of the crews they contain and stuff. Their technology is mostly crystalline based. The kind of electronics we have is kind of archaic. Although we do a pretty good job of creating with it, but it's way behind what's available out there.
When I was an electronic warfare officer for the Army, and I knew about the, creation of the PC and all that. I worked very closely with NSA, so I wasn't part of it, but I knew about this new stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And then I found out, I was with the reserves for a while, and I ran into somebody who said that the next, and this was back, let me think, that would have had to have been probably about 1981. And I was being told that the next generation of computers would be based on crystals.
Yeah.
So they undoubtedly, the secret space program knows about crystals.
Well, the secret space program has been building ships for other civilizations.
Really?
And trading technology. But that technology has not been shared with Earth. And because all the corporations here, and those who own the corporations, the 13 banking families, want things to continue as it is because they don't feel like changing. And they're making lots of money keeping control. And, we don't need coal power. We don't even really need solar power with some of these technologies they have. You can, a little box the size of it, less than the size of an attaché case to power a house. All that technology, including replicators, is sitting in the hulls of those spheres for Earth right now. And, the entire Earth system is based on scarcity and deprivation. And we live in an abundant universe created by an abundant source creator. I'm speaking of the overall, what source is. And the rest of these civilizations have had abundance for thousands of years. And meanwhile, we got starving people in Africa and fighting over crude oil in the Middle East, of all things, that we don't even need, with even the technology that our space programs, the secret space programs have among themselves, but don't share. And these galactics, they have the technology waiting to go. And it's just a matter of saying go, and they'll bring it. And you don't need to ever pay a utility bill again. If you need food, you can replicate it. And these are advanced replicators. The last generation replicators didn't make very good meat. Thor told me it tasted like 100-year-old canned meat. And
I can hear they're using hemp oil now in them.
In replicators?
Replicators, yeah. I think it I might have been Good that said that. One of them did, and I thought, well, that is just absolutely, it's got to be the truth, because that would be what would be the perfect, source for creating replication, any form.
What the replicators are is kind of a mid-step for humans. They're essentially intention amplifiers. They work with your consciousness, and they produce what you are telling the device you need, okay? And basically what it does is it goes in and goes into its database, and these new ones interface to the I Am source consciousness itself. It can create anything that's ever been made. Some of them are like little boxes that you can hold, like about the size of one of those small LCD projectors. Some of them there's small ones that can be like a wristband, and then there's some big industrial ones that can create huge industrial items too. We don't need to cut trees. We don't need to do any of this stuff that we've been doing to the planet. And then there's also devices to get rid of the waste, and just turn it back into the ether, you got a toxic waste or some uranium thing you need to get rid of. You put it in this device and it returns it back to, the 0 point state, the quantum flux. So nothing's ever wasted in the universe. What we've lacked is the ability, basically the belief that we can manifest. So these things are kind of a bridge for that while people come up to speed in their own consciousness and provide the immediate need for food and, without destroying, what's going to be the complete Earth. Whether those replicators come on this Earth, this old Earth first, or the new one, I'm not quite sure, but my thinking now is it's going to be in the new situation. But, I'm not privileged to all the details yet. So we'll see how it goes. But I do know those devices exist.
Let me ask you something. I'm fond of calling it the Star Trek universes out there.
Mm-hmm.
Only Earth is blind to the fact that it's there. Were you
blinded?
Huh? Purposely. Yes. But I think that also for a good portion of the breakaway civilization that they're also blind.
They are. They don't know who they are.
They don't know about us, and they don't know about Earth, and, they are in their own little bubble of reality.
Mm-hmm.
Were you a Star Trek fan?
Oh, huge.
Okay, Generations?
Yep.
Okay, my partner there, Walt, one day he says to me, you know what I think? I think that while the secret space program was building the Star Trek universe, here on Earth we were building the Q continuum. Isn't that classic?
It's kind of where we're going, actually.
Isn't it though? And that's what I'd like to ask you about. Because first off, I want to know, now the Sphere Alliance, I'm assuming, has permission by humanity to interfere, or are they here in case we ask for help? Or I'm assuming maybe the Prime Commander.
Define permission by humanity. You talking about leadership?
No. Oh, no. No, I'm talking about the concept of the Prime Directive in Star Trek, that you can't muck in somebody's civilization without permission, basically, being asked to do so. I'm just wondering, is the Prime, order of Star Trek, in fact, something that they actually is enacted here?
How am I to phrase this? It's a very good question. What is here now it's not really wanted by the beings who run this planet. Okay? Although at the highest levels, those beings are coming around now. In fact, in the last week, they came around. Okay? Because basically this Earth was like a huge plantation. The major products on the etheric level were human emotion, which generates a kind of energy, which David Wilcox got into with the harvesting of energy And
we call it loosh, correctly? Loosh?
Yes, that was, there's certain kinds of beings that use that as a fuel. But that's also based on the belief that they are in a scarce energy situation and they can't get all the energy they need from source. Because their hearts are closed. That's what the problem is. There was a lot of DNA sold off planet. In fact, there was so much DNA sold off this planet because this Earth has such a wild strain of DNA that was sold to the open market in the universe, the multiverse, that nobody here should have ever had to pay taxes or pay for education or all this stuff. These huge quantities of money were essentially managed by what is known as the Chinese dragons. And they want to continue they want to re-phoenix the financial system so they stay in control. But there's no need for a financial system when you've got all the energy you need for free. Most of our money goes to buying fuel and interest. The fuel is embedded in the cost of food, the cost of shipping, and you take that out, you've taken a huge chunk of expenses that's going into oil and nuclear and all this other stuff. The other is, the replicator devices for the other critical of the system was distribution, you're wealthy, so you get the nice car. You're poor, so you get the clunker, That's not based on a person's value as a human being. That's based on arbitrary digits in your bank account because maybe who your daddy was or what school you went to. And these are all systems of limitation. So what you're having in one fell swoop is you've got free energy devices to supply the energy you need for a car or home or whatever. There's a lot of issues that can be solved just with free energy, like desalinization of water, and making all the farmland that's dry everywhere into agricultural land, just planting trees and changing the climate. There was a phenomenon when I grew up in Arizona. There was a lot of irrigation when I was young, and people had a lot of green lawns. And it got to the point in Arizona, before so many people moved there, that things were so green, the weather started changing, getting more rainy. Well, that's a reversal of the desert process. That can happen globally. So you've got these things like that. They have a lot of tech. They really do. They have a lot of amazing medical technology, for healing. They can do surgery on you with scalpels that they don't cut the actual cell. They actually pry the cells apart when the scalpel goes through. So there's no blood. And it heals instantly. And there's no trauma to the body. They can do some amazing things. One of the things that has changed is most of them were having babies many of the civilizations were having babies in artificial wombs, kind of a technology childbirth. And they now know that is not the way to have children. That it's important for the mother to bond with the baby even in the womb. And a lot of that stuff is changing, even in the spirit lines. I was told that the Dracos, at least the ones who have come over to the side of oneness, have become vegetarians. So there's been a lot of changes even in the last year. Anyway, that's, I guess, before I got off track there, but, is the DNA cell why so many people disappear? No, the DNA cell was sampled by probes. Sometimes, you could think of them as drones that were like insects. They look like mosquitoes or flies or whatever. And they'd sample a hair, they'd sample blood or whatever. Some of the DNA I think might have come from blood banks and organ, tissue like placentas and things too. But it doesn't take much DNA to create another being. So it can be very tiny amounts. And it was sold for huge amounts of money. or at least a form of value, whether it's a type of money or not, it was value. Okay, what was the next one? Why did we decide we needed rulers, someone to tell us what to do? How did we deviate from universal principles? That is a long, long story. The short answer is there was a point in creation among the original creators where a jealousy erupted. And there were two beings. I believe this was before they were in form. There were a couple. You can think of them, a male and a female energy. And they had a love bond between them. And that created a jealousy in some of the other beings because these two beings, because of the love bond, had more source energy coming through when they created. And they were prolific creators in the universe. So eventually this jealousy came up in what the Sphere Alliance calls the original garden, which was not really a planet but a realm. It's a little bit more vague than a planet. So a proposal came up, said, what would it be like to experience not being one, not knowing that you were part of Source? They all knew that at that point, but what they didn't know was that, well, they knew they were all one, but they really didn't know they were Source itself in a way. There was even an ignorance on their part. So this experiment began, and it started from, they included all realms. And the first separation was creating a hierarchy, a spiritual hierarchy. And this was, at the top was what's known as the archangels, who were kind of a costume that these original creators hid behind. And any one of these archangels' suits could be used by any of the 11 originals. And they hid behind these so that the experiment could occur. And there was this vague, nebulous Godhead that, if you read the books like the Urantia book and the Law of One and all these things, these are storylines of how certain beings believe things function. And in books like the Urantia book were highly believed in by the Orions and the Dracos and and especially the banking world. It's almost like their Bible. So that led to a hierarchy. And once you got a hierarchy, there erupts a sense of one being over another. And Source is all one. No piece of Source is less than any other piece of Source. But once you have this hierarchy, then you get a natural tendency for people to say, hey, you can't tell me what to do. So eventually you get this separation that occurs, one side or the other, and violence erupts, and then you have the wars erupt, the galactic wars, and so on. And, and then you had these hierarchies that thought that this hierarchy was a divine model that was meant to be, when actually it was, from the beginning, an illusion. And so they modeled their worlds, their kingdoms on these patterns, kind of like a fractal. It was a fractal reflection of what was set up in the beginning of this experiment. And all the realms, the galactics for a long time thought they weren't part of this experiment on Earth, but they really were part of it. They just didn't know it. They had a little bit easier time of it. They had advanced tech, but they still had their horrible battles between, the Dracos and the Orions and the Pleiadians and the Andromedans. They all got invaded. And, but basically these ruling classes came about as kind of a mirror of this hierarchy that they thought was some sort of divine order, and really was not really how Source looked at it. And the angelic realm knows that. They know that it's all one. And they treat humans as being brothers, not being lower beings. The angels I have a friend, G.W. Harden, who has a lot of experience with angels. He told me once that the angelics could only stay in the earth energy field as it was. This was in 2012 for something like 22 minutes at a time. So they themselves were kind of limited how long they could stay here. And they had to come and go from their realm because of their frequencies. They would start to degrade if they stayed here too long. And so what's now happening is this DNA that's been latent in humans activating. It's kind of like it's like an internal tesseract in the cell that's multidimensional that enables humans to do things that other beings could do but couldn't do in 3D, and things that we couldn't do in 3D that they do. It all becomes one. So this is a pattern of that is moving out, and it's this oneness is going to start at Earth and move outwards through the rest of the multiverse. Anyway, this whole thing of rulers is coming to an end. You shouldn't hate these people. They served a role for a time, especially when people didn't know who they were. And they kept a kind of order, even though it was a brutal order. But their time is over, and people should be appreciative of the job they did, which was a difficult job, and thank them for their service, and tell them that it's time to move on. But I hate getting into these whole things about there's so many storylines out there right now about us versus them, and who's the bad guy, who's the cabal, who's this, that enemy, and they're manufacturing more enemies by the minute, and a lot of them are even synthetic enemies and actors being, in stage acted killings of people that it's just absurd what's going on right now. But anyway, that's kind of how that all got started.
Does anybody, Dolly, do you have any kind of a question that you'd like to ask Colleen, Emily?
Go ahead, Em.
So, you talk about, I kind of want to go back to the whole Atlantis thing.
Okay.
You mentioned that everybody has the same blood type and the same genetic marker.
Well, the Rh negative seems to be common with the Atlantis survivors.
Right.
The other blood types represent different galactic lines.
Okay.
Then one's not better than another, and the Pleiadians told me that the tech that they have medical wise, they can use any blood type, and that Rh factor doesn't play into it. They don't have any rejection issues.
Okay.
But it is a marker of kind of my galactic DNA origin. Atlantis 2 seems to be quite a bit different than Atlantis 1. Atlantis 1 sounded very idyllic, quite an interesting civilization.
Right.
Atlantis 2, there was a lot of trouble, and it just got worse. But I kind of wonder if these things, what we call the people I work with, the what if experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe some of this stuff that seems like such a horrible tragedy, in retrospect, we may have a grander view of it, seeing that it had to happen to shorten this what if experiment, so that we could go back to what we really are. It's
right.
Kind of like getting trapped in your own video game.
Can I give you an example of that? Because when John Kennedy was killed, of course, it changed the timeline. Mm-hmm. And for all of my life, I thought it was the greatest tragedy that happened to us. But then I realized in the last year or so that had he lived, we would have just followed him into whatever blissful place we were going, but we would have followed him. Without him and the change of the timeline, it's really fallen on each individual to find their own path within themselves. And,
you had to look, things got so bad you had to look inwards. because the outside was not going to help you. And, like my generation, like I used to do a lot of IT work, and, I was 50 something. Once you got in your 50s, you were not desired in the computer industry because you're an old guy, Doesn't mean you couldn't do the work, because, it's all mental anyway. And it's like, composers never cease composing because they're 80 years old. Same thing with computer guys, But there's an ageism inherent in the system. But what and all the jobs are outsourced to India and China, but curiously what happened is guys like me end up with no job, start asking questions as to why, and you got a nation filled of computer guys, okay, who had these amazing analytical skills, and all of a sudden they jumped on the job market, and they said, this sucks. I'm going to find out what happened to me. And they start blogging, they start doing radio shows, and you'd be amazed at how many people have IT backgrounds in all this, or science backgrounds.
Oh, I work with a bunch of people. I work in marketing on the side, and I have 7 or 8 analyticals on my team.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable on how incredibly in-depth they are with the technical world.
Yeah. Oh, I got an answer on the beacon. You want to hear it?
Absolutely.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, it says, Dear one Taryn, the one Nancy Hopkins believes she needs to operate a beacon. No beacons are necessary. All is in place. Data collectors, StanX, end. That's what it says. So you don't need to operate it anymore.
Okay, I wasn't exactly operating it. It was just there. I was like, okay, I'll put this here. But thank you for that. Appreciate it.
So apparently whatever needed to happen, happened. That's what I get from that. And they just didn't tell you.
They just what, hon?
They just forgot to get back to you and say, well, you don't need to do that anymore. So.
Well, I kind of figured it, but, it's like, until I hear different, it's not, well, I have to dust it, that's it. And I'm not gonna go anywhere with it, for artifact's sake, yeah, that's where those things are.
Yeah.
Who knows what they'll be used for next? Maybe they'll just beam down into this place that I call home. Anyway, what were you saying before you were so rudely interrupted by the Sphere Alliance?
Oh yeah, it came in an SMS message, from Denise.
Thank you, Denise.
I'm not a real good multitasker. That's part of the problem being an analytical person.
I know the feeling.
Yeah. So, I took it.
Okay, do you remember what we were talking about?
The analytics. The analytical.
Yes.
Yeah, well anyway, what happened is basically a lot of analytical people started asking questions and started dissecting how the systems worked, And they set the groundwork for a lot of other people, and people kept building on that. And, I'm amazed at how much data has come out since the year 2000. When I started this journey, the big mysteries were, we knew about there were UFOs, we knew there were grays, but nobody had heard of reptilians. And nobody knew what the deal was with who owned the Federal Reserve, whether it was government or not. And now we know all of it, So there's been an amazing amount of knowledge that's come out.
Well, the secret space program.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was it. You hear little bits and pieces of it, but now it's like, oh yeah, it's there. Yeah, it's there.
Yeah, it's there. And, they still haven't come clean to the American public. And, we got a media that's run by the same people that control it all. So, I think it's just, it all falls apart at once as far as their control. And, but, it's not going to be chaos like people expect. You're not going to have to dig a hole in the ground and have your 1,000,000 rounds of ammo. And, I'm in Texas here. This is the most armed place I've ever seen in my life. Lovely people, but it's a tough place, There's everything here bites or stings you. And these people have been through a lot, you know, and the poor people here have had it pretty rough. There's not a lot of jobs. But fortunately, the cost of living here is cheap, so they're getting by, you know. I mean, the houses here are so much cheaper than California. And
remember the Alamo.
Yeah, the Alamo. Yeah, another piece of trauma put into the mass consciousness of the Alamo. It's like 9/11 for Texans. And that's manipulation too, you know. Yeah. This belief we're going to have an invader at any time, so you got to have your guns. And I'm not knocking people who own guns. I don't think banning guns is going to stop people from killing people. It's a change of heart that stops people from killing people.
Exactly. Yeah. Dolly, did you have some question that you wanted to ask? Dolly?
Yeah, but I forgot it.
Okay. You know what I want?
What happens when you get old?
Well, if it comes back to you, you know, just interrupt me. But what I really wanted to do was to share with the audience some of the things that were posted on your blog. I mean, my God, that thing has grown. From the Sphere Alliance, in their words. Can I do that?
Say that again.
I want to read what you had posted from the Sphere Alliance. I just took little quips of what they were saying, you know, and I'd just like to read it so that people might get a feeling for more like where they're coming from.
Yeah, as long as it's in context, you know. I mean, there was a learning curve for me too with all this, so.
Well, you can stop me and add at any point if you think that what I'm saying needs some explanation. How's that?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Just let me get the page up here. All right. All are creators of their own reality now. All former agreements, systems, controls, contracts are over. All. Anything to add to that?
That is absolutely true.
Okay. Here's another one.
Heather Antucci-Giroff took care of that with the law filings in December of 2012. There's a legal system called the UCC. Was it Uniform Commerce Code, or anyway? It's a legal system that actually runs everything, and it's an extension of. It's the business equivalent of the Akashic Records, okay? And it's the craziest thing because it's the most difficult thing to find things in. But in that, she filed the nature of this experiment was that it only took one who was aware to end it. And she filed the legal paperwork to end it. And being one of the original beings involved in this, she brought it down in law. And she had when people read her law filings, they said, this is the strangest legal wording I've ever read, but they were written in a multidimensional way. And the Galactics got it immediately. Because one of the first things that happened, we thought the banking systems would collapse first, but it was actually the galactic commerce systems that collapsed first. That were profiting off of Earth. Because they got it and they knew what it meant. And they knew who she was. And, so it was over by one of the original participants, you know, contractually. Everything was by contract. That's why, you know, when you sign anything, there's a legal document. There's a contract. A lot of it has been hidden in consent. Like when a police officer says, do you understand me? That's saying, do you stand under my authority? You can say, they'll get pissed off if you say, I am aware. They want you to say, I understand. Those are little legal tricks that they're trained to do in their scripts. And they do the same thing in courts. So there's a lot of implied consent that's been hidden from people. But the Galactics got it. And it is truly over. There was the last there was a few other contracts before this, and those were wrapped up in March of this year. And it's over. It really is over.
So let me ask you now, you said this woman's name is Heather and she's a human being?
Yes.
Okay, so you kind of answered the question that you didn't answer earlier, in that it does only take one human being to act as a representative of humanity to act in the name of humanity, because even though we're in a free world universe, so many people don't even execute free will because they don't even understand what it means. That those of us that have become aware are not only allowed to use our free will in the name of humanity's free will, but it's actually a responsibility. And
Yeah,
so
it only took one human being
right.
knowing that they are I am or source in body. Eternal. At that point she rephrased it as eternal essence in body.
Uh-huh.
But the same thing. All of our knowledge has been expanding since then, including hers, as she understood more and more. But it only took one being standing in their I am consciousness, and saying, in doing the necessary, she did the necessary contracts in it. She was a trained lawyer and trained in parts of the law that very few people are trained in, and that related to the commerce systems. Everything here is a commerce system. Cliff High, who does the WebBot project, he's fond of saying that everything is a business plan. He's absolutely right. Everything was a business plan. Everything was about profit. It was like the Ferengi in Star Trek. And even
I love that. That's so good. I love that. Oh, the Ferengi.
They were copying off of DNA. They were all the governments around the earth are registered as corporations in Washington D.C. In the Washington itself, as far as the U.S. government, is registered in London as a corporation. That's why you can't find the U.S. one in the U.S. registries. It's in London, but they're all corporations. And in the case of the United States, it's been in receivership since 1871, and the Rothschilds have been running it as a corporation in receivership of a receiver, and they have this cellophane wrapper on the republic, as it were, that looks like a republic, but it really isn't. It's a corporation. And that's becoming, when we first said that in 2012, people thought we were crazy. And now you hear it everywhere. Everybody realizes it now. It truly is a corporation. And it's,
well, they're listed on the stock market.
Yeah. Well, in your social security numbers, you used to be able to go to Fidelity Investments. They've since removed this ability, and type in your social security number and actually pull up the bond that was placed on your embodiment when you were born with your birth certificate. And
we can't see it anymore.
No, you can't see it anymore. That trade was canceled in law, but we think that trade still continues. It's hidden. Are you familiar with exchange traded funds?
No.
Okay, they're like a stock, okay? But the way they work on the stock market is they're a pool of stocks. Say, like, you want to trade in oil companies, but you don't want to buy an individual oil company. There's a thing called an ETF of, like an oil company, for example. And you can trade it like a stock, and it's, the concept behind it is there's the fund shares, which is the ETF, and there's these things called creation units that are used to buy the underlying stock, okay? And there's this disassociation between the underlying ETF share and the creation, what they call the creation asset, or what's the term? The creation, what's the term? Anyways, it begins with creation. But what we believe has been going on is they've been taking the same birth certificates in only big trading houses like J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and those type of institutions can create ETFs. by law with the SEC. So what we think was the open market that was once traded in birth certificates has gone covert, and they're using the birth certificates in warehouse at these major banking investment houses to buy underlying stocks. Basically, they say they have this much value, so therefore they get this much stock, and they issue the check for the stock. And then that in turn creates these ETFs which are traded. People buy and sell them. It's a way of hiding the audit trail to the underlying birth certificate, is what we believe. They haven't proved that 100%, but we believe that's true. They call them creation units.
Or maybe they're trading in their human stock for commodity stock because they know the human stock is about to crash.
Well, they're trading in an asset that is no longer valid. Is really what.
Well, yeah, never really was. Nobody asked us.
It's like somebody stamped cancel on those things, yet they're still trading them, but don't have to show it. And since they control both sides of the equation, the stock and the banking, they can hide it. And with this broken trail through the broken linkage between the underlying stock purchase and what purchased that, what instrument was used to purchase that underlying stock, and the actual ETF share, which is an abstraction of the basket of stocks. It's complicated, but I hope maybe I explained it enough that you can kind of get the picture. If you can think of a right-hand side, you've got an exchange-traded fund share. Maybe you got 10 shares. And then maybe on the left side, you got 10 oil companies. Okay. Those oil company shares always have to match the value in totality with the ETF shares. And they trade in sync with the underlying stock. But the question that was never asked is what is buying those underlying stocks? And the answer is they're trading internal in-house assets for those stock purchases. And they're doing it through, the usual banking mechanisms of creating paper money via the checking systems and, the digital systems. But what is the real asset they're trading for the stocks is the question. And that is not transparent. There's no audit trail. And, there's a lot of things on this earth like that. It's really crazy. The more you dig into it, the crazier you realize how everything is.
While I was looking away from the screen, we got a bunch of questions here, and we're running out of, we're running out of time. Of course, we got Emily's show behind us, so we can run over a little bit. Or if you really want to, we can do 5 hours.
I gotta do, Emily's show, I think, next.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what's next. Is you ready for that one?
Yeah, I'll need a break before that one.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we will.
Oh, okay, excellent. So let me just run through this. Now, somebody's telling about taking a blue-green algae to explore, and all of a sudden they saw some kind of a $50 coin vortex, a size of a $50 coin. They leaped away, and the one who introduced the product said, if you enter such a way, if you'll enter such a way, and she stops because he says, enter, heck, I got away from there. Where do you suppose I would have ended up with, I think? I'm not sure where did you suppose I would occur, or too vague with all variables open? I'm not sure what that means, but does this make any sense to you?
It sounds like she's asking where did the portal go? Is that what she's asking?
Maybe, is it possible for some little thing like a green algae to have a portal attached to it?
There are all kinds of portals. Some of them are so tiny that they can't do anything, and, some of them, whole planets can go through. So, I don't know anything about this tachyonized blue-green algae. I know Cobra does a lot of stuff with tachyonized water and things, and I think that's a Pleiadian tech, but I don't know anything about this stuff. When I had trouble with my legs, I did get some cream once from him that was tachyonized. I think I got it from Robert Potter. And it did seem to have a healing effect on my legs. But, there seems to be something to that technology. As far as the portals that creates, I don't know. I'd have to have more details on that, what that was all about. I'm not completely sure I know what she's asking.
Right, fair enough. Okay, Rakisha wants to know, I was not born in the U.S. Do I still have a straw man account?
Does she have a Social Security card?
That is the key, isn't it? If you've got the Social Security card.
You know, if she's not monetized here, she's monetized in her home country. She'll be monetized somewhere.
Actually, I think it's a he, but that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yes, Dolly, somebody saying yes, he has a Social Security number.
He's in the system.
Yeah, it's Walt, actually. Dolly wants to know, I would like to know if Taryn is glad he accepted my invite, if he has enjoyed himself as much as we've enjoyed his sharing with us.
Yeah, this has been fun. I've not done many radio shows. I was not comfortable at first. You know, I was in such a stage of learning that I didn't feel that I could speak on anything with any sense of firm understanding.
Well, you hit it well. You hit it well. Let me tell you, I heard none of that in you.
Yeah, the last year has been very helpful to me. I've come to understand a lot about myself, so I feel more confident that way.
Well, you're amongst friends here too.
Yeah. I love talking to women in this kind of way because, I don't know, something about it's easy to talk. It's always been easy for me to talk to women. I mean, not that I don't talk to men, but often with men you get into these, what do you call it?
Headbutts?
Yeah, that's a good term. I was thinking of another phrase, but it probably isn't polite.
Testosterone wars.
I was thinking pissing contest, but
yeah, same thing.
It's fun. It's good. It's some interesting questions. Do we have any more questions?
Not in chat, no.
We're tired now.
Yeah, we're getting to the top of the hour, and Emily, what are you gonna ask Taryn when you get him on your show?
Oh, I want to go into the whole Indigo thing with his daughter and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I'll tell you what at least what I've seen. I'm not an Indigo expert. But,
no, just your experience. That's all. Okay. And we'll probably branch off into other things.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. Ask him to tell the angel story.
Oh, yes.
The angel encounter?
Yes, my show was actually going to be about angels tonight, but then I was like, I'll hijack you. So we could talk about that too.
The one in the desert?
Yeah.
Okay. I was in a church group. It was kind of like a...
Not now.
Wait.
Her show. We're signing off of this show. You've got another one to do. This is this is a record with us. We normally don't capture somebody for, 3 shows in a row, or 2 shows after the first one. Thank you, Dolly. Thank you for arranging this. Thank you for the chatters that actually demanded this. It was well done. Taryn, best of everything, and thank you so much for sharing. And like I say, I found your website again, and what is that website? Can you please give it?
It's americankabuki.blogspot.com.
Well, basically, if you put in the American Kabuki, you're going to find him on Google. So, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to give it over to Colleen, and
we've had over 20 million hits since 2012. So it's
oh my, wow. Do you have one of those little globe things that shows the hits? I mean, there's no globe there anymore.
Yeah, there is a globe there. There's I have a little counter though that counts them from the beginning.
And
since February 2012, it's been over 20 million now. It just turned over 20 million.
Congratulations. You're well done. And like I say, I am thoroughly impressed with all the information that you provided and shared with us, and your life.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun. Yes.
All right. So now you're going to stay on here. Colleen's going to stay up with Emily, and Dolly, are you and I going to say goodnight?
Yes.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Dolly.
Good night,
Taryn. Thank you. Love you.
We're going to be listening. Appreciate it. Thank you so very much. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
At HaggieShack.com. Simulcast to Wolf Spirit Radio.